right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Jess.
Um,
Okay, and there's Priya. Okay, our agenda for this session, obviously introductions. We're going to go over important dates, the expectations for our interns, for our cooperating teachers and our mentors, and then observation, assessment, and grades, how that's done. Subbing versus student teaching. There's always questions on can an intern sub, things like that. So we'll go over that. And then, of course, support and resources for you. Next slide.
so
And
that
there,
link that I just, hopefully that works.
yes.
Um,
Yeah,
that
you
is,
see the link. Okay. And we want to introduce you to our team here in the P3K6 faculty and staff. So we have Dr. Priya Valetti. And she's there. Hi, Priya.
Hi,
And she is
everyone.
hi. And she
Sorry,
is
do
the
you want me to introduce my?
P3K6 instructor of record for the clinical year. She's also an assistant teaching professor. Then Dr. Jess Bacon, who's also here, P3K6 BMAT program coordinator, an instructor of record for clinical as well, and associate professor. Then there's me. I'm the P3K6 program specialist. I'm responsible for the P3K6 placements. I recognize quite a few of you, the names, so it's good to see everyone. And then Diana Troutner, who's our new clinical partnership coordinator. Okay, so that is our team, and we're all here to support you in any way we can. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then the clinical team, once again, is myself, my colleague Diana Troutner, who's the clinical partnership coordinator. And then for honorarium support, we have Nate Cottrell, who's responsible for payments, and Diana Trotner, who also is responsible for the honorariums. Uh, Once again, clinical instructors of record, Dr. Jess Bacon and Dr. Priya Valetti. Then we have our undergraduate program coordinators for P3, Dr. Deirdre Paul, and for K6, Dr. Paul. Okay, and then for our graduate program coordinators, P3, Dr. Paul, K6, Dr. Danae Davis. And then for the BMAT for our dual cert students, Dr. Jess Bacon, and our department chair is Dr. Linda Wise. If you need any help with anthology, whether it's submitting observations, submitting assessments, um, grades, anything like that, it would please email anthology@montclair.edu. There actually is a live person behind that email, and they're very helpful and responsive. Also, our assessment director is Ms. Melissa Harris. Okay.
And all the emails in the live Google Slides presentation that I shared are embedded into the slide. So
Yes.
just to
Thank you. Okay, so the P3K6 clinical team. So we have myself, program specialist, Diana Troutner, clinical partnership coordinator. Is this the same slide? I'm sorry, same slide. Okay, there we go. Okay, so who to contact? For any type of intern expectations, responsibilities, concerns, any questions or concerns about your intern, regarding your intern, please email me. And then if I need to branch off and include any of my colleagues, I will. But I would be the first point person. For any honorarium information as to when you get, you'll be getting this information in email blasts and things like that. But any specific questions you have, please email clinicalinternships@montclair.edu. Once again, anything on anthology, our anthology system or assessments, anthology@montclair.edu. That's kind of the help desk, okay? And then recording of orientation on anthology and honorariums, there's the YouTube that you could click on.
And Gina, you do have a question in the chat about whether they
Okay.
need to set up an account with Anthology.
Okay, they should contact clinical internships at montclair.edu just to make sure everything, your name is and everything is in there correctly.
But just to answer that question, we set up that account for you with your email and send you information on how to log in. So if you haven't gotten that, you can email the email listed here and we'll get you set up with that.
Yeah.
Yes, and this, just to clarify, there was a meeting that Nate and Melissa Harris, they conducted about 2 weeks ago to really just review all of the anthology stuff and honorarium. So this is a YouTube link from that Zoom meeting. So in case you couldn't attend that, you can watch that later. But we'll go over some anthology stuff as well. But that's there for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, next. Yes, the slides will be emailed to you, so you have this information. Okay, important dates. So we have December 5th. Oh my gosh, December already. Final assessments are due in anthology. And then there's the two pieces. There is the assessment and then there's a form that gets filled out. December 19th is the last day of clinical 1 and 2. I've had quite a few emails from interns. They may also be asking you if they can go 3 days and get them, get completed sooner. The answer is no. They do have to go to that week. I mean, if like for clinical 1, they go on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, then of course they wouldn't report on the 19th, but it would be that week, depending for clinical 1, what days they report, but they cannot go stop earlier. Okay. They have to go to that week. And that's a state requirement. January honorariums will be issued on a rolling basis. So look out for any emails, probably from clinical internships email telling you when to expect, or the date, the time frame for that. And then in May, we have a really great event. It's the Teacher Education Program Celebration. And it's really just a party for our interns. We invite our cooperating teachers, we invite our mentors. So it's just a really fun time. And then obviously for the observation schedule, if you haven't seen it, please go to the cooperating teacher website on Canvas. Oh, thank you for the link, Priya. And it will give you all the observation dates. And just keep in mind that is a guideline. Okay. Things happen, God forbid, weather, illness, whatever, but it's just to give you an idea of when an observation should take place. Okay. It's about every 2 weeks. And
And
then the mentor schedule is also on there.
Gina, somebody's asking what the January honorarium issued on a rolling basis means.
Yeah, honestly, I don't take care of the honorariums.
I can answer that, Gina.
Diana, can you
Yeah.
answer that one?
So essentially, once you finish with your clinical 2 intern, that's when your honorarium will be mailed out. And they're not necessarily mailed out on one day. They're sort of mailed out as they're processed on a rolling basis. So if you finish clinical 2 in December, then you'll receive your payment in January. If you finish clinical 2 in May, then you'll receive your payment more like June or in the June month. I hope that answers the question.
Mhm. Thank you, Diana.
And I think
Yes, and
somebody didn't realize they get paid, but yes, we
yes, I just saw that. Yes, you do get paid. I
Not
love that.
much, but
No, but we do appreciate you very much. So that's our way of showing you, besides other things. And if the student is in clinical 1, are they in clinical 2 with me? And that's Tara. Hi, Tara. I think we've met before. Yes. So our intention is always to keep them in the same placement for clinical 1 and 2, barring any extenuating circumstances. So yes. Okay.
Yeah, so it seems a lot of you didn't know. Just so you know, the honorarium for Clinical 1 is $150, and for hosting a Clinical 2 student, it's $400. So again, we don't feel that that's enough for all that you are doing for our students, but just a small token, to show our appreciation. So
Diana, what slide is this? I'm sorry.
this is it. I
We're
can do
handing
this
it
one.
over to Priya now. Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
give you a break. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. All right. So the attendance for Clinical 1 and Clinical 2 are slightly different. So if you have a Clinical 1 intern, they are going to attend for 175 hours. So as Gina already mentioned, the end date for all clinical interns is December 19th, and they do need to attend until that date, even if they reach the 175 hours prior to that, which a lot of them will. But we do want them in the classrooms until the 19th. Hopefully, this is true for everyone, but the intern should really keep the same schedule each week for consistency. So, whatever you all have agreed upon, if the intern's coming Tuesdays and Wednesdays, that should be consistent throughout the semester. Obviously, things may come up, school's closed a certain day or
Yes.
something comes up. We understand that. But what we don't want is for you to be dealing with, constant, like, oh, this week I'm going to do these 2 days. Next week I'll do these two. That's not helpful for you as a teacher. We know that consistency is key. And so just know that that's what we are telling our students. And, if that for some reason is not the case, then please let us know so we can reiterate that message. While the students are in Clinical 1, they are also enrolled in a class called Seminar 1 with an instructor, which is really used as a time for them to reflect on what they're seeing in the placement, also kind of reflect on their own teaching. This is where they end up developing, a lesson plan and kind of do the assessments that are required of the course. But it's really seen as kind of it's a co-requisite, but it's just kind of goes hand in hand with Clinical 1. So I don't think you'll really be hearing from the seminar instructor, so to speak, but in case you do, just know that they all do have a seminar instructor. What we have tried to do this semester is to group them according to their placement. So, if we have 10 students in Bloomfield, most of those students will be in the same seminar with the same seminar instructor. For attendance for Clinical 1, someone already mentioned, we got an email from our student asking to log the hours. So those hours are logged on Anthology. So the student enters the hours, and then you will get a notification to say, please approve the hours. And that's when you need to go into Anthology and just validate that the student was there those days. Please try to encourage them to do this. We are encouraging them to do this as the weeks are going on. They shouldn't be saving this till the end to enter all the dates. And that way we can make sure that they're on track to get the 175 hours. All right, let me stop for a second. I saw a lot of action in the chat. Make sure there's nothing there.
Yeah.
I didn't read it though. Does anyone?
Priya?
Yep.
I think it's
Yeah.
covered. Yeah, I think
Covered?
I'm trying to respond to folks.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay,
Stop
just let me
too
know to
much.
stop if at any time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Can I
right.
just touch
Yes,
on one
yes,
thing
yes, yes.
before we move on? Okay, so it was a question about this, the intern is now going 3 days a week. That's a little unusual. We don't really encourage the 3 days a week. It's okay if they want to, and it's okay with the school and the cooperating teacher, but that doesn't mean, once again, that they're going to get, they're going to complete sooner. They still have to go to December 19th. So I just want to make sure that the goal of them going 3 days a week is not for that reason.
Yeah.
If that person, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the chat. If that CT could possibly email me the intern's name, I'd like to just investigate that a bit.
Sure.
Thank you. It's
All right.
okay if they want it more time. It's just, I'm not sure why. It's not that common.
Diana, could you just go back 1 second to let me just touch on Clinical 2. So okay, so Clinical 2 also ends December 19th. That's a full-time placement, so they're there every day. It is typically the same placement as Clinical 1. So if you have a Clinical 1 student, that means next semester you'll have them as a Clinical 2, barring any, circumstances. And very similar to Clinical 1, while they're in Clinical 2, they are attending a class, Seminar 2, which is again a class where they reflect. Clinical 2 class or Seminar 2 class is mainly focused on getting them ready to apply for jobs as well. So they do a lot of work in that class with their resumes, their cover letters, creating digital portfolios and things like that to get them ready for the workforce. The hours are different for clinical too, because as you know, it's 300 hours, which they usually go well above. So instead of having them log the actual hours that they are attending, we just ask that they submit a form when they're actually going to be absent. So they have access to that form. You honestly don't need to worry about that at all because we monitor that on our end. But basically, when they're absent, they have to submit a form telling us they're absent, and they're only allowed to be absent 5 times in the semester. It doesn't count if your school is closed or if there's a university sanctioned event, which I don't think is going to happen in the fall. But anytime they're sick or they have something else come up, they do need to submit that. And if there's an issue, a student is very sick and has to be out for more than 5 absences, Gina handles that on a case by case basis.
Mm-hmm.
All
Yeah.
right, perfect. And now you can go to the next slide, Diana.
Okay.
All right. And then just kind of probably goes without saying, but obviously, if someone is sick or there's an emergency, a religious observance, these are all acceptable reasons. We don't really encourage students to be absent if they have an interview. Obviously, we allow for a little wiggle room towards the end of the semester, especially if they're on track with their hours. But we try to, discourage that if possible. They shouldn't be taking vacation. They have been told that their schedule is the school schedule. So they're going by whatever the district calendar is, not Montclair State's. So for instance, Montclair State has a fall break coming up in a couple weeks, but they will still be going to their placement during that time. They will get the days off that your school has off, according to the district calendar. And also, I know we've said this a lot of times, but if they finish their hours and they have days left and they say, all right, I'm not going to come anymore, even though it's only December 2nd, that's not allowed either. They do have to go until the semester end. And again, if there's an extreme circumstance, something comes up, Gina handles that on a case by case basis. So the student should reach out to Gina in case they think for some reason they will be out for an extended period of time. All right, you can go ahead.
Okay. So intern expectations, please consult with the clinical handbooks on the Cooperating Teacher website. It gives more of a detailed description of the intern expectations, but our interns are required to attend their placement on the days scheduled for the entire, school day. Typically, we say it's the teacher's contracted hours, 7 to 8 hours a day, for at least the same hours that contracted teachers are required to be at the school, including time before student arrival and after student dismissal. They're expected to adhere to the full school day schedule, regardless of the cooperating teacher's teaching load. So, for example, if no class is scheduled during the final period, interns should use that time for instructional activities such as preparing materials, co-planning, collecting and reviewing artifacts. And just like Dr. Valetti just said, the interns need to follow the district's calendar, not the Montclair State calendar. That's a common question, and it can be confusing, but they need to follow your calendar, not the Montclair State calendar. And teacher interns may need to stay late after school. We encourage them to attend meetings or evening events related to their academic progress, such as back to school night, anything that you deem that would be worthwhile for them, valuable, and also, that would count towards their hours. And then this is very important. We say this all the time. just, for legal reasons, teacher interns cannot be left alone in a classroom with students at any time, period. There's no exceptions with this. It's really for everyone's protection. And it would become a legal issue. So we just want to make you aware of that. Okay. Okay. And then the cooperating teacher expectations, once again, please look at the clinical handbooks if you haven't already. And it gives a lot of, detailed information. But ensure that the intern is present for the official hours the teachers work, like we said before, your contracted hours. Meet each week during instructional time to provide ongoing feedback. We call this, we tell the interns this is kind of called sacred time. It's a time at least weekly for them to sit down with you for as much time as possible and just go over, what's happening, how they're doing, um, just a time for them to reflect and for you to also, give guidance. Co-plan and co-teach with the intern whenever possible. We really encourage the co-teaching. And of course, the co-planning is important as well, whenever possible. Help the intern coordinate, the university mentor observation dates and times. That is also on the university, on the observation schedule. It has the cooperating teachers observation schedules. And once again, it's a guideline. And then the mentors schedule as well. For clinical one, our mentors or university supervisors, as we like to call them, go out twice to observe our intern. During clinical two, it's 4 times. They're not surprise visits. They schedule with the intern when it is a good day and time. They send the lesson plan ahead of time to the mentor to give them a chance to review it. And then when the mentor comes, they do the observation. And it's always nice, if possible, when the intern and the mentor can get together for a chat and, with the intern and, and brainstorm and, whatever comes up. And then you must complete and submit all assessment forms in our anthology system. And once again, if you have any issues with it, any trouble, questions, please email anthology@montclair.edu. There's a question here. No co-teaching should take place when they are being
That's a good
observed.
question, yeah.
Yeah. Priya, would you answer that? I know the answer, but I want to make sure.
No co-teaching should take place when they are being. Yeah, so that is a good question. I mean, I think ideally because the mentor is
Right.
observing the clinical intern, we would say that, of course, we want you to co-teach as much as possible, but for those select few times that their mentor is coming in to be observed, we would ask that the clinical intern is the one that is, teaching the lesson.
Yeah, because once again, yeah. Thank you, Priya. Exactly. I kind of knew the answer, but that's a great question. I don't think I've thought about that much. And then are they allowed to use our lesson plans for observation?
I answered that question.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
yeah,
Amazing.
for the formal observed lessons, they do have to use our format.
Right.
It's an extensive format, which, we believe gets them prepared for overthinking a lesson, which at this stage is a good thing for them to learn. But for all the other lessons that they're working with you on and teaching, especially as they're in clinical too, they can use whatever local format you use and recommend.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, university mentor expectations. Once again, we refer you to the cooperating teacher website where the clinical handbooks are for more detailed information. But what we do expect from our university mentors is that they provide concrete feedback and guidance, offer practical advice, They serve as a sounding board. Sometimes students even want to discuss personal issues with the mentors. I mean, they're there to listen, help with issues, challenges, conflicts. Also help with ensuring that a positive, productive relationship is developed and maintained between the intern and the CT. Um, and they do see themselves as mentors, not supervisors. Um, they do evaluate them. They do, observe them, like we said before, but we like to think of them more, as mentors than actual supervisors. Okay, the university mentor role, as I said earlier, for clinical one, there's two observations. Um, Ongoing support, the mentor lets the intern know the best way to reach them and the hours they could reach them. Obviously, not in the middle of the night, but they do kind of um, outline how to reach them, whether it's text or email, and the times that are good. So it's ongoing. Final evaluation, which is also submitted into anthology, and they contribute to the grade for clinical one. Okay. For clinical two, there's four observations. Once again, ongoing support. There's a final observation, and then a final grade and a written evaluation at the end of clinical two.
Okay, so this is me. So hi everybody, I'm Jessica, and thank you again for all serving our students. I really believe that this is actually the most important part of their education and becoming teachers. And so your role is vital, and we appreciate it. And so there's actually a bunch of links on the bottom of this too, for you all. But what I think is helpful, and actually have seen a full, hours long presentation on this, which we don't have the time for right now. And also, I don't want to presume that you don't know the co-teaching models already. But it may be a new idea that the co-teaching models that can actually be used formally in your relationship and working with students, and they can evolve over time. So some of the co-teaching models that are a little bit more passive for one of the educators and active for the other may be appropriate when students are in clinical one in their early month, and then as they go, they may take a more active role. So this slide just says that pre-service coaching, co-teaching, which is a framework that was created out of St. Cloud. And there's also a link in here from Bank Street, and an article that kind of explains it a little bit further. And I'll throw these links actually in the chat too if you're not in the. So there's four links here. There's also a couple from Paula Kluth's website, which is just generally on the co-teaching models. So this talks about the ways that you can use co-teaching best practices to foster, a stronger relationship between you and your intern. It leverages the benefit of having both a mentor, teacher, and a resident in the classroom to foster strong student relationships, manage student personal and interpersonal development, and meet the demands of student learning. All the while, clinical students are reflecting under your mentorship and growing in their practice. And so I'm going to go to the next slide. So these are the co-teaching models. It's a little hard to see on this slide, but if you're not familiar with them, there's lots of content out there about these. Marilyn Friend is the person who created these models. So one teach, one observe may be something that you'll see more early on in the cooperating teachers, first month or so. Maybe that's kind of what they've been doing so far in clinical one, where they're primarily observing you teaching. And then one teach, one assist may also be a common role that we'll be seeing early on. But then as things move along, the last five models are really nice to start getting students more actively involved. So station teaching, where the just admit somebody else. Station teaching, where the students are broken up into small groups and there can be instruction in two of the small groups, or if you have a third adult, even like a paraprofessional, you could have three stations with direct instruction in all of them. You could also have an independent station, and this can be a nice way to allow the students to work in heterogeneous groups with breaking up some of the content. Parallel teaching can be really helpful when you want to kind of have a smaller student to teacher ratio, and maybe even get a lesson with a few different kind of lenses or angles at the lesson. So you could break the group in half and have two teachers simultaneously teaching at the same time. Certainly that it depends sometimes on the space that you have or how you're organizing the space in your classroom, whether or not that works well. But I've seen that to be a really great model too. Um, Supplemental teaching can be with where one teacher is teaching the main group, and then maybe there's a few students who need to work on a particular skill that the other teacher could work on that skill with a few students. Um, or a small group where the students are working on the same information. And then team teaching is where both teachers are up front together, kind of bouncing off of each other, and maybe one is recording things and the other is talking, and then those things switch. So those are just a few thoughts of different ways, and that's so that's a few thoughts on different ways you might want to think about approaching it. This link, yeah, certainly, Tara, this could be used in clinical one. I don't think that there's ever a bad time to try some of these different models out. It also tends to increase the support the students get. These models have been shown in research to be highly effective to, aid student learning and student collaboration, student support. So hopefully some of the resources in here are also helpful. And then the last one from Bank Street, um, I think it actually also has some really nice strategies about how to think about co-planning with uh, a clinical intern. It's got some really nice strategies and ideas, and even ideas for how to use different online and tech platforms to co-plan. So hopefully that's helpful. And yeah, maybe someday we will have time to run a formal co-teaching workshop for you all in the future.
All right, perfect. So I know we touched upon the lesson plan a little bit. We would just want to share with you some tips on the lesson plan. So obviously, we want the clinical intern to be planning before they're teaching and not kind of winging things as they're going. Can go to the next slide. So everything that the clinical intern does should be planned thoroughly in advance for all the lessons that they teach. So that's, even lessons that are not getting formally observed by the university mentor, they really should be planning in advance, with you or whoever is working with them. So for the lessons that the mentor is coming in, we do ask that they utilize the template that we are providing them. They are all familiar with this template. They've used it in their coursework prior to starting the clinical year. We know that it is not reflective of the types of lesson plan templates that they will use eventually, like Jess Bacon, I talked about a little while ago. It forces them to kind of overthink a lot about the lesson plan. But at this point, when they haven't taught yet, we think that it's important for them to think about different aspects. And then eventually it will become second nature to think about a lot of these things. And then, of course, they won't need to use this rigorous template. But for other lessons that aren't being necessarily observed by the mentor, even the lessons that you are observing as the cooperating teacher, you're more than willing to allow them to use whatever format your school or district follows. So it's really only those 6 lessons, the 2 in clinical 1 and 4 in clinical 2, that are being observed by the mentor, that we're asking them to use the template. And then they should keep all the lessons in a place that are accessible by you and the mentor. So I won't spend too much time on the template because This is the student's responsibility, but it's just linked in here so that in case you wanted, you may see it as they're working on it. It's pretty standard in terms of, all these things with objectives, essential questions. Down here, this chart was put in by our program because one of the things that we were noticing as a whole was that students were having a hard time linking their assessments to their objectives. In other words, they would come up with objectives for the lesson, but then when you looked at the assessment at in the lesson, it didn't necessarily match up with what they said they were trying to teach. And so that chart is kind of put in there as a way, again, to force them to think about, all right, if this is your objective, what assessment are you using? And it could be something informal, doesn't have to be a formal assessment, but what assessment are you using to tell whether or not that objective was met? You can go to the next slide. All right. And then, in our classes that precede the clinical year, we talk a lot about universal design for learning and thinking about adaptations for varying learners. And so this is where they're applying those skills and we're asking them to think about how are they thinking about UDL in their lesson through multiple means of representation, expression, and engagement. So again, these are all terms that they have been taught and are familiar with. Again, it's just asking them to kind of reflect and make sure that they are hitting upon these three principles. And then here, oh, sorry, one more thing on that slide. Underneath that is where there may be specific students in your class that they want to think about specific accommodations. That's where they would be thinking about those needs and delineating there for their mentor to see. All right, and then this is kind of what you're used to probably seeing. This is really just the structure procedure of the lesson plan, and then thinking about if there's any homework or extensions or any way that they're having family engagement. That's optional, but just again, ways to get them to think about these are all things that they can and should be thinking about when planning a lesson. All right. And Gina, I'll turn it over to you for
Yep.
the last part.
Okay. So we had touched on subbing on the agenda, and it's important that we do adhere to not only the state's rules, but ours as well. So the big picture is clinical interns should not be used as substitutes. However, we certainly do want to help out if it's a rare or emergency situation. So what we tell the interns is if their school asks them to sub, they should contact me first, and I will give them guidance, as to what to do. Um, if there typically are two licensed teachers in a room, for instance, in a co-taught classroom, the intern should not replace a licensed teacher. Okay, so, and once again, interns may not legally be put in charge of students in a classroom alone unless they are being paid as a sub. So if in a rare emergency situation they do sub, they would, obviously need to be paid. HR would have to be alerted. Are there any questions on that? Okay. Okay. Non-subbing scenarios would be the cooperating teacher calls out sick and a sub is assigned to the room. The intern is asked to run the class and the sub is present. This is a typical intern activity, not subbing. Okay. And if it's an aide or a paraprofessional who monitors the hall, who usually monitors hallways and lunch is out, the intern is asked to help another aide supervise. Once again, that's an intern activity, not subbing. Okay.
All right, thank you, Gina. So
Sure.
the other thing we wanted to just share with you is that we have an overarching organization here at Montclair State called the Montclair State University for Educational Renewal, and they do a variety of different partnerships with schools, everything from leading professional development, offering teacher grants for action research, hosting international students that do school visits, a variety of work. And one of the things that the initiatives that they lead here is an opportunity to become a clinical faculty member, which is a status that you can gain here at the university. It involves taking 3 courses. You have to apply, get a letter of recommendation, and then you take 3 courses. You have 2 or 3 years to complete those courses, and then you can gain that clinical faculty status, and gain access to our annual conference, some benefits on campus, and a variety of other things. So if that's something that interests you, you can contact Kristen Armato. Her email is down here, and it'll be in the slides as well, and she can provide more information. So we are going to transition into breakout groups. Priya, do you want to share a little bit about those while I just